let me congratulate International Society of Environmental Geotechnology for this initiative. In particular, I would like to congratulate and thanks Professor Shibin and Professor C.S. Tang for putting in efforts in bringing out this series of webinars, which are basically dealing with the challenges and the opportunities. So I take this opportunity to share with all of you my initiatives in the field of energy geotechnics, geomechanical characteristics of gas hydrate bearing sediments. So this work has been done in collaboration with ONGC, Oil and Natural Gas Corporation of India. In the simplest possible form, this is a source of energy which we'd like to harness, and this is a big challenge to all technologists, administrators, and researchers. If you look at the world map, which is given by Collett et al. 2015, you will find that gas hydrates of methane type are available in several parts of the world. And that's the reason that the research has been focused in the recent past in harnessing the energy from them and to understand the geotechnical issues related to methane gas hydrates bearing sediments. I come from India, and if you look at the coastal margins of India, you will find that there are few locations where the gas hydrate samples have been recovered. I'll be talking about this subsequently. There are few other deposits along the Indian coast where gas hydrate occurrence has been inferred. So overall, this is becoming a very hot topic in India as well. And I was happy and lucky enough to be a part of the initiatives which were taken by our government and Oil and Natural Gas Corporation of India. As I said, methane gas hydrates are falling in the realm of energy geotechnics. The whole idea of exploration of reservoirs of gas hydrate sediments is to ultimately release methane gas, which is the source of energy. If you look at the structure, this is how the structure looks like of the hydrates. So in the water molecule, you have a CH4 molecule which is trapped. And the way we define this phenomena is it's a methane gas which is consisting of lattice of water, and in the hydrocarbon molecules are trapped, and it resembles like a dirty ice. So I'll show you some of the pictures where you can appreciate it better. So the way to look at the gas hydrates would be that this is a multi-phase geomaterial, and of course resembling like ice-like clathrates. So their habitat, as we discussed just now, is mostly marine environment, and it is estimated that 1 meter cube of methane gas hydrate sediments would be able to dissipate 180 meter cube of methane gas at standard temperature and pressure. And hence you can realize that why everybody is interested in doing research in this area. So the research includes the exploration part of the hydrate bearing sediments, and then how to release the methane which is trapped in this cage of ice-like clathrates to use it in the energy form. This is how it looks like. There could be different sources of methane which might be trapped in these clathrates. So the way we define this is two broad categories: thermogenic. And thermogenic phenomena happens normally in the deep sea beds away from the continental shelf. And this mostly because of the chemical reactions which are going on in the Earth's crust. And this is where we can have gases like methane, we can have gases like ethane, and the gases like propane, which could be a consortium of the gases in which we are interested. The second category of hydrates is, which is the source is biogenic because of the microbial decomposition of organic matter in the environment, which is either lakes or offshore in the continental shelves and so on. and these are mostly methanogenic in nature. What are the challenges and where we can collaborate and where we can work together? And particularly those of you who are initiating your research in this area, the challenge number one is how to synthesize the hydrates in the laboratory. Because you must be realizing that once we talk about the source of methane gas, which is either thermogenic or biogenic, the question is how this gas migrates into the sediments. And this becomes a beautiful example of gas flows in saturated and unsaturated sediments. We require laboratory experimentation techniques. We require numerical modeling techniques to model these things. Another thing is, as I said, formation itself is a big question. So far, I have not been successful in synthesizing hydrates in my laboratory, which I was trying to do. So once you have synthesized the hydrates, then only we can talk about, migration of gases and other geomechanical aspects associated with the hydrate bearing sediments. So when we talk about the hydrate formation, the morphology plays a very important role. And this is what everybody is trying to understand. What type of morphology is responsible for creation of a certain type of a hydrate bearing sediment, and how this morphology is going to influence the geomechanical properties. Now, when I say geomechanical properties, these are the elastic modulus, Poisson's ratio, shear modulus, bulk modulus, stress-strain relationships, permeability, coupled phenomena, which I'm going to talk about subsequently. This becomes a big challenge. Remember, the formation of hydrates is going to be under slightly abnormal temperature and pressure conditions. So the conditions required for formation of hydrate sediments would be extremely high pressures. It's expected because the location is somewhere in the seabed, and this temperature which are very close to 0 degree, 2 to 3 degree. So overall, this becomes a very complicated system. You remember in conventional soil mechanics, we used to talk about the grain structure of the soils. So this is where the morphology is going to control all the properties of the gas hydrate bearing sediments. We have three types of morphologies. One is pore filling. You can see now here the grains are getting filled up. The space between the grains is getting filled up by the hydrates. So this is the pore filling. We have load bearing, cementing sort of a thing, where the structure has a property to take the load also. And of course, the third one is the cementing, where the entire matrix gets cemented and it acts like a cemented sand. The biggest question is how to synthesize hydrates and how to detect what type of morphology is getting formed in these sediments. We are trying to do this type of studies, but still, I think, a long way to go. There are many challenges. So laboratory simulation is a very big challenge in this context. And once you have synthesized this, then the oil industries are asking a question: how would you extract methane from the reservoirs which are rich in the hydrates? So I have shown here an animation. If I want to liberate energy coming out of the hydrate bearing sediments, what I have to do is I have to go for an exploration and drill a well. And this is the formation in which the gas hydrate bearing sediments are. We call them as hydrate bearing reservoirs, from where if I extract, methane gas will come out. So extraction is normally done by few techniques. And these techniques are either you depressurize it because the system is at a very high pressure, and because of very high low temperatures, the hydrates are getting interlocked in the sediments. So one of the techniques which is what is being mastered by everybody is depressurization by extraction well, and if I allow the suction to happen, or if I open it to the atmosphere. Thermal stimulation. If I heat up the entire system over here, all right, I can create a thermodynamically unstable situation which will allow migration of methane from these reservoirs. I wanted to simulate both these conditions in the laboratory, and this is where our efforts are on right now. Now, once you are extracting the methane gas from the hydrates, one has to be extremely careful, because there are several geomechanical mechanisms which are going to initiate the moment you start doing the extraction process. And this is where utmost care is required to understand the whole phenomena. And this phenomena is quite similar to the phenomena which you have studied in conventional geomechanics, where we were talking about, subsidence due to excess withdrawal of water from the aquifers. Something of the same sort, where the stability becomes a big issue. I have tried to show it here in the animation form, and I will come back to this. So the first mechanism which is going to be very important is, if I am using the thermal stimulation, how heat would migrate into a multi-phase porous media like gas hydrate bearing sediments. Efforts have been done by people to study the heat migration in sediments. In fact, in our laboratory, my ex-students and present students are working in this area quite intensely, where we want to see how heat pulse migrates through the sediments and how it can be utilized for characterizing the geomaterials. The multiphase is basically methane and water. So think of a situation when you are puncturing the reservoirs, the gas is going to come out. This is how I have shown it in the animation. The gas will come out, and both have to be modeled. That means a multiphase system has to be modeled, keeping in view that along with the gas, methane gas, the water is also going to flow out. So this becomes a coupled flow phenomena. What happens because of all these things is water is flowing out. Along with the water, the fines which are present in the sediments would also migrate. And I'm sure you are aware of the suffusion phenomena, where the migration of fine takes place, and because of that, the material loses its strength. Now, these things put together are becoming a big challenge on studying the well bore instability. That means once you lower down the well, and whatever infrastructure you are going to make, you will see in this cartoon, I will replay it, that the seabed subsidence is taking place because of extraction. And this seabed subsidence is something equivalent to subsidence of the geomaterials or of the bed because of discharge of water. And foundation instability is going to take place. The systems which are located on this type of formation, they may get unstable. Uncontrolled methane release is a very big issue, which is going to cause greenhouse effect. And sometimes you must have read in the literature that because of extraction of the methane, there is a possibility of triggering of tsunami. So this becomes a very interesting, very challenging topic for geotechnical engineers to study and to master. India has done a tremendous amount of work in this area, and Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India, under Directorate General of Hydrocarbons, is very active in this studies. We have already gone for 3 National Gas Hydrate Program. We call them as NGHP1, NGHP2, and NGHP3. And these are in different parts and the locations of the areas or the bays where the hydrates have been identified. So KG is the KG Basin, Krishna Godavari Basin, Mahanadi Basin, and Andaman Basins. Interestingly, for a geotechnical engineer like me, an environmental geotechnologist like me, this becomes a very interesting case study where we have sands and clays both, which can be utilized for characterization and further studies related to the hydrates. So this becomes a very, very challenging situation. Now, I will come upon to the point that what are the pertinent questions in this subject and where the challenge lies and where is an opportunity to collaborate on the most challenging problems which the entire world is facing. So the pertinent questions are, what is the matrix of gas hydrate bearing sediment? What is it comprises of? So different phases, like when we talk about different phases, there are sediments, there are water phase, which is either unfrozen or frozen, and then there are gases which are interacting with each other. And what is the thermodynamic stability of these components when we talk about temperature and pressure relationships? So these parts also leads to the geomechanical properties of GHBS. That means this is what actually we are trying to study right now in our laboratory. How the shear strength, stiffness would vary during hydrate formation. So imagine the soil is getting frozen, the strength is increasing, the stiffness is increasing, but when I am trying to harness the energy out of these sediments, I am dissociating the sediments. And at that time, there will be a drop in strength and stiffness. Now, if I do not know strength and stiffness drop, I cannot do the exploration properly. And then ultimately, what is the influence of the shear strength and stiffness of gas hydrate bearing sediments as far as the pressure and temperature phases are concerned? The multi-phase flow, which I just talked about, water and methane coming together during production, what would be their kinematics, how they are going to behave. We talk about relation of fluid permeability with respect to saturations of different phases. Now, when we talk about the saturation of phases, the most important saturation state we talk about is the hydrate saturation, because all these geomechanical properties are going to be a function of hydrate saturation. And hydrate saturation is an offshoot of the amount of initial moisture which is present in the matrix of the sediments, type of gases, concentration of the gases, and the thermodynamic conditions which are prevailing at that point, that is the pressure and temperature. How would you couple these things? So this becomes a very challenging thought. And then we want to talk about the production condition, that is wellbore design and efficient methane production. This is where the THM, that is thermo-hydromechanical modeling of gas hydrate bearing sediments, is required. Our group is working in this area. We are partially successful so far, but a lot is to be still done. There are some good success stories in the recent past. We have published extensively some papers, state of the art of gas hydrates and relative permeability of hydrate bearing sediments. Formation and dissociation of methane gas hydrates in sediments, a critical review, and investigations on excess gas method. One of the methods to synthesize hydrates is excess gas method of methane gas hydrates. A comprehensive review on the geomechanical properties of gas hydrate bearing sediments. Our idea was to create empirical relationships which can be utilized to obtain elastic modulus, Poisson's ratio, shear modulus, and bulk modulus just by inputting the type of sediments which you are dealing with, the type of gas which you have, and what is the hydrate saturation. We have also done some work related to thermal instability of gas hydrate bearing sediments and what are the issues related to this. And another paper which we have published recently is investigations on gas permeability in porous media. So you must be realizing that at this point of time, all these studies appear to be slightly disjointed. But truly speaking, based on my earlier discussion, you must have realized that dealing with gas hydrate bearing sediments is not an easy task, because there are several mechanisms, processes, components which are involved, which contribute to the overall material characteristics. So what are my current focus research? Most of this part I have already discussed. I wanted to synthesize hydrates in my laboratory. It has not happened so far. And then once I have synthesized the hydrates, I would love to find out the gas permeability through the hydrates. It's something like when you do falling head test or constant head test, the same test if it is done on the frozen sediments, what the permeability would be. Having done this, the second aspect would be spatial distribution and quantification of the methane gas hydrates in sediment pores. Very tricky task. How would you look into the structure to say what type of formation has occurred, and then depressurization to release the methane gas. And once these two modules have been studied, we would like to study the shear strength and stiffness of the gas hydrate bearing sediments. So these are the two parts of the experimental study which we are doing. In the process, I have developed a excellent testing facility known as environmental or gas hydrate triaxial setup, which you can see over here. It has been recently installed and some of my students are working in this area. And then we have a laser microscope through which I wanted to see the spatial distribution of the hydrates which are getting formed and their morphology. Very ambitious project, and but then we have to challenge ourselves, if you really want to enhance the knowledge and the state of the knowledge. We developed high pressure hydrate cells to study these things. We are using time domain refractometry to establish this spatial distribution and to detect whether the hydrates are getting formed or not. And then we have also developed a temperature controlled direct shear apparatus, which happens to be, number one, very less expensive. You can do quickly tests, and then you can study very nicely how the gas hydrate bearing sediments of sandy type appears to be and what is their behavior. So right now our studies are mostly based on sands. Clays are still far away to achieve because of the nuances associated with the fine grained material, but we are sure that we will also study the sandy phases, clay phases. Whatever experiments we have done so far, we are trying to use them to do numerical studies. And this is where we use Tough Plus Hydrates software, which gives you the state of the material. This is a very rough idea on which we are working right now. We are trying to study what is multi-phase of the frozen sands. All right, so I started my research by considering how much fraction of the water gets frozen, how much water remains unfrozen, and then what's the interaction between these phases. So we have come out with these type of models where the gas hydrate bearing sediments have been defined in the 4 phases or a 3-phase system like your unsaturated soils, and then we are trying to come out with the empirical relationships. I hope you can realize that this is going to be a very intricate thing if I really want to look into the structure of the grains by using NMR calorimetry or the gas dilatometer. This is where we also use the concept of soil freezing characteristic curve. And some of my students are working in this area. Very simple looking experiments have been developed in my laboratory where I am freezing the sands and I'm seeing the dielectric response of these sands in a sample holder which acts like a capacitor, and then by using the bulk permittivity I am able to differentiate between the phases which are present in the sample. And fortunately this work has been published in Old Regions Science and Technology, a methodology to establish freezing characteristics of partially saturated sands. Now coming back to the mathematical modeling part where the challenges are. I have been talking about the pressure and temperature conditions. So this is a typical hydrate stability thermodynamic curve, all right, where you plot pressure and temperature on y and x axis. This is what is known as the stability curve. On the left hand side is the stability zone. Then we can show depressurization by this path. That means if I start from this point, the stability zone, and if I try to enhance the pressure, or if I do a reverse process, all right, then I can depressurize the whole system. I can do it by thermal stimulation also, enhancing the temperature. Sorry, or the third one could be a combination of the two. All right, so these are the 3 techniques which we are trying to model right now, experimentally as well as mathematically. And this is the hydrate reservoir model which we have considered, where you have the seabed, overburden, top seal, bottom seal, and in between the hydrate bearing layers are entangled and followed by the underlying strata. So very quickly I'll show you some of the results in which we were collaborating with our colleagues from China and Japan, and we have modeled the hydrate reservoirs from Nankai trough. Porosity logs have been created, hydrate saturation logs have been created, initial permeability logs have been created, absolute permeability logs have been created, and we know the properties of the sub-layers which are present in the entire system. Now this is how the well bore is being drilled and the heating is being done to liberate the gas. So these are the typical results which we were able to obtain so far. We have tried to model the gas production as a function of time. And this is what actually commercial agencies and the companies are interested in. They want to see how much gas can be liberated at the end of the day. So the whole purpose of doing this research is to give an answer to the government or to the industries who are dealing with alternate energy sources or non-conventional energy sources, a clear answer, what type of treatment should be done so that the gas can be liberated. and what would be the dynamics of this gas without causing any hazard associated with the instability of reservoirs. We have published these results in the journal Environmental Geotechnics along with Professor Lin Shen and Professor Feng. And there's a second paper which we have done for Shenhu, China case study, where also my collaborators have been Professor Shen and Professor Feng. So closing down to my discussion of today, what is the way forward and opportunities to collaborate? Because that is what actually is very, very important for all of us. You must have realized that this is a very complicated subject beyond the capabilities and capacities of individuals. But yes, our concepts are becoming clear by our studies and thoughts. I wish that investigation should be taken forward to study the suitability of the gas hydrate bearing sediments for carbon dioxide sequestration. Very important latest topic which everybody is talking about under carbon sequestration, and for enhanced methane recovery. I also proposed this through this forum that let's form a team of students and the postdoctoral students, and let's go for the exchange program to accelerate the knowledge which has been attained so far for the efficient utilization of the existing facilities. And this is where my concept of Sagarin, I would like to reiterate, becomes more contemporary. So please be a part of this mission. And Sagarin, you can go on the website of the International Society for Environmental Geotechnology, and then you will find that this center has been publicized some time back. So let us collaborate and work together. Development of numerical simulators that would couple multi-phase fluid flow, non-isothermal heat transfer, and geomechanical properties of gas hydrate bearing sediments during hydrate formation and dissociation. So my request to all of you who have heard me is, let us initiate this collaboration as soon as possible. And of course, I always keep this quote in front of me: some journeys need no roads, only a willing heart. And there's another motivating quote which comes to my mind: what we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our methods of questioning. And this was sent by Heisenberg and Fritz of Capra. This quotation is what says everything about the gas hydrate research. We are trying to model a phenomena which occurs in nature: methane gas getting trapped in the sediments under extreme pressure, low temperatures. And this is where we have to simulate this mechanism in the laboratory and then go one step beyond this. Thank you very much for your attention. These are my associates who have taught me this subject so carefully and very well: Dr. Jeevan Joseph, Dr. Sanyam Dangayach, Lijit, who is still working with me, and he'll be finishing his PhD very soon. Very good postdoctoral candidate for those of you who want to hire him. Bhini Rani, who did MS by Research, and my another PhD scholar, Mr. Rao. So thank you very much for your kind attention. I'll be very happy to interact with those of you who are interested to teach me this subject, to collaborate with me, utilize my facilities. Please remain in touch, remain healthy and safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor DNS. The duration of your presentation is very accurate, half an hour. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I guess there must be a lot of questions from the audience, but due to the time limit, they can send you email, and you can communicate us through emails. Let's thank Professor Syme again for his wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much.